Denny Hamlin, talking with Prime afterwards, did admit that Brent Cruz is at the moment set up to drive that number 11 or whatever number they decide to do, drive that car at the end of the 2027 season. So Brent Cruz will be a member of Joe Gibbs Racing starting in the 2028 Daytona 500. And of course, if plans change, maybe that ends up being the 2027 Daytona 500. Maybe Hamlin decides to stick around for another year due to sponsorships or something like that to help out Joe Gibbs Racing. Or maybe he still wants to win that championship. Maybe he doesn't win it yet at that point. Who knows? But at the current moment, the plan is for Brent Cruz to drive the number 11 starting in the 2028 Daytona 500. And overall, I think this is a good move. I mean, I said it earlier. I do think Hamlin has more than 2 years left, but he does want to retire on top. Very few drivers have really been able to retire at the top of their game, or at least near the top of their game, like Jeff Gordon. That's why I respect Gordon so much. He was at the top of it. He made it to the championship four when he retired. He was still very close to the top of his game. Mark Martin, I think he was very close to the top of his game, and he was like in his 50s. Like Mark Martin retired way late, and he was winning races in his 50s. That was very impressive. But we've seen most drivers retire when they've fallen off completely. Like Jimmy Johnson's obviously fallen off. He's not completely retired, but Darrell Waltrip, he fell off hard. Richard Petty, obviously he fell off very hard. Terry Labonte, Bobby Labonte. So the list goes on of drivers that stuck around maybe a little bit too long. And I think Hamlin wants to make sure that he's not one of those drivers. So I understand the move. But the bigger question here, I think, is how do we feel about Brent Cruz? I've said it before. I think Brent Cruz is the future of the sport. I think years from now, every single year, it's going to be Brent Cruz versus Zilich versus Heim versus Hocevar, maybe a couple other guys competing for the championship year in and year out. I put Cruz on that level. He's a natural talent on the road courses. He's been racing road courses for his whole life because he raced go-karts for many years. He's still trying to figure out the oval part of things, and he's getting quite good at that. He just needs to maybe finish a race and get a win. I know his first win is coming very soon. He's already gotten it a couple of times. I'll start with Tyler on this one. Brent Cruz looks like he's going to be driving for Joe Gibbs Racing starting in 2028. How do we feel about the move? Not just from Denny Hamlin. Do you think Denny Hamlin should hang it up at the end of 2027? And also, how do you feel about Brent Cruz and his future?
I think Denny needs to take his talents to his own team if he wants to stick around. I think that's what he should do, even if it's a extra car or whatever, that they're non-charter or whatever.
Open car, yeah.
I think that's what he needs to do if he wants to, open car. I think that's what he needs to do if he wants to stick around, just for his own enjoyment in the sport at this point, because we all know he can do it. That's not the question. It's more the enjoyment. He can make sure that car is as good as he wants it to be. So when it comes to that, but when it comes to Brent Cruz, I don't know. I'm not as high on him as everybody else is. I'm probably wrong, like I am with everything else when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I just don't see it yet. I don't see him. I see there's other drivers you can put in the 11 and be more worthy at this point, but that's me.
You heard it here first. Brent Cruz is going to get his first win this week at Pocono. You heard it. You heard him. Tyler's a good luck charm to these drivers.
High possibility. High possibility.
Like he said that stuff about Reddick. Reddick went out and won the
Look what he
first
did
couple
to Zane Smith.
Zane Smith for Pete's. Yeah, Zane Smith.
I warned y'all, it could have killed him.
And look at Suarez. Like Suarez had one. He's like, he's not winning. He's lucky if he gets a win. Wins a couple of days later. It's the nature of the beast sometimes, Tyler. So you heard it here first. Brent Cruz will get his first win. Put your whole house down on it. Don't actually do that. If you lose your house on it, that's on you, bud. That's on you. But yeah, I have a great feeling about Brent Cruz, and I can understand what you're saying, Tyler, because Brent Cruz hasn't necessarily done all that much yet, but he's still fairly new, and I don't think he's as much of a natural talent as Zilich. I think they're both very equal in just pure talent, but I think some drivers are more natural talent where it's just they can get in a car and just go fast immediately. I think Brent Cruz is more of a driver where he really needs to figure it out a little bit more, and then he'll be able to find his speed. And he has the speed, just really needs to finish races. But once he finishes one of these races, I think he's going to get a bunch of wins. I think he's going to win multiple O'Reilly Series races this year. I just think he's that sort of talent. But Cory, first of all, how do we feel about Denny? Do you think he's ready to hang it up at the end of 2027? Do you want to? A big part of me wants to see him keep going, but I get the sentiment of trying to end your career while you're still at the top of your game and you don't have that fall off like a lot of people have. So I get that. But also, how do you feel about Brent Cruz and his potential future with Joe Gibbs Racing?
Man, I think Tyler said it. I think if Denny wants to continue past 2027, he'll do it with 2311. And even then, it's just if he wants to, because you know that if he's still winning, that they're not going to kick him out. But at the same time, like I think after his heartbreak this year, he was even debating it, right? So he clearly his love for it's fading, but it's also hard to have your love fade if you're being as dominant as he is this year. So I'd like to see him stay as long as he's competitive because I don't know. At the same time, it's go out on your own terms. Like there's very few drivers that ever do that. So, but with Brent Cruz, I kind of am in the middle. Like I see the talent that people are talking about. I also understand where Tyler's coming from. I think we've also been spoiled by how good Zilich was to get a cup ride, how good Corey Heim was, and it took him forever to get a cup ride. Meanwhile, Brent Cruz hasn't really proven enough yet, and they're it's almost like he's guaranteed a cup ride in 2 years. So it's not that any of us doubt the ability. It's more that we haven't seen enough yet. And I think that's a respectable take to have because, I mean, not a lot of NASCAR fans watch other series or know his experience outside of NASCAR. So it's like, prove it to us at this level before we want to say, oh, yeah, you deserve to drive on Sundays.
Yeah, I get that. But a couple of things we got to keep in mind also for this. There is no contract signed yet. Like Brent Cruz hasn't signed a contract to race for the Cup Series Joe Gibbs Racing team at the moment. And he still has a year and a half of racing. And I would expect the rest of this year, he obviously continues to learn the O'Reilly Series, probably puts his complete focus on that, probably gets a couple more Truck Series starts, probably races a late model here and there or something like that. Maybe even gets a Cup Series start or two this season. But I would expect next season that 2311 probably brings him on in a fourth car to race like 5 to 10 races is what I personally would expect, just because that close relationship with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2311, and Hamlin would probably want to get his essentially his heir, his replacement at 2311 to at least figure out the car a little bit. So I would expect him to probably get a good amount of starts next year to at least get a little bit used to the car. I'm looking forward to see what Brent Cruz can do in this sport. I'm very much looking forward to it. Brent Cruz is a great talent. I understand both of y'all's sentiment though, because he hasn't won a race yet. He hasn't really done too much of anything yet in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He's been competitive, but that's really all we could say. He's just been competitive. He hasn't been dominating races. He hasn't been like putting pressure on Allgaier or the top guys in the series and stuff like that. So I get all that, but he's still really young, and this is a year and a half away. He has a year and a half still of racing, so there's still a lot of time to prove himself, not just to fans, but to Joe Gibbs Racing. Because, like I said, there is no contract signed yet. Things could potentially change. Like, who knows? Like, look at Retzloff. Retzloff's probably racing for Toyota next year. Like, what if Retzloff has a kick-ass year next year and wins a bunch of races, and Brent Cruz wins like one race next year?
Retzloff to the 11.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I think it's still all up in the air. Maybe high, like it's still all up in the air, but it's definitely a discussion point for sure. And I see it. I see the writings on the wall. Brent Cruz getting the number 11. I think that's a guarantee if he does all the right things. If he does all the right things and wins races and competes for the championship, I I think that ride is his. But he obviously needs to work on his skills a little bit more. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Brent Cruz potentially taking over the number 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing after Denny Hamlin either retires or maybe like Cory and Tyler said, maybe he decides to go to 2311 and race for his own race team for a couple of years before he hangs it up. Who knows? But it sounds like to me he's probably going to hang it up at the end of 2027. And how do we feel about Hamlin hanging it up? And how do we feel about Brent Cruz potentially being his heir and being his replacement for that number 11 car?